Tom Blyth plays Billy the Kid in Billy the Kid. I'm Matt Noble of Gold Derby, and I wanted to kick things off by asking you, Tom, what did you learn from playing Billy?
Oh man, so many things, a plethora of things. First of all, I learned how to ride a horse, which was a new one for me. I'd ridden a few times as a kid and fallen off once and was kind of sworn never to do it again. But I had to learn for this and fell in love with it eventually. And actually now, hopefully I want to have horses one day and ride for the rest of my life because they're majestic beasts. But internally, maybe more metaphorically, I learned not to take not to judge a book by its cover, I think, really in a big way, because I think people know or think they know who Billy is or was based on the accounts that we know of him and him to be a killer and an outlaw and things. But he was so much more that I never realized until I got to dig deep. And yeah, although I learned a lot about him, I also learned a lot about just people in general and the idea that you know, what someone presents themselves as is usually there's a whole, you know, facade that behind that is a ton of multitudes of things.
Yeah, and I imagine also just being an actor, that idea of presenting different versions and different characters and portraying different things is also sort of speaks to you a bit as well.
100%. I think that's why I enjoy acting. I think it's because you get to do so many things at once. I remember being in school and someone saying, you know, what do you want to do at 15 years old? And I was like, I don't know. There's so much I want to do. I want to do it all. And then eventually it dawned on me that because I was a big movie lover, that was the only career really that you got to really pretend to be everything. You know, you might not actually get to perform brain surgery, but you get close enough that you can actually feel like you are. And yes, and also then the empathetic aspect of it, which is stepping into people's shoes and the psychology of trying to understand people who maybe feel like they're not very close to you, which I think is really just an exercise in empathy that we get to do every day as actors. Yeah.
You said you're a big movie fan. Was there a particular movie or performance that really drew you in and made you want to maybe have a go at that yourself?
So many, and I could name a few. Weirdly, The Great Escape was one of the first movies I remember watching with my dad when I was really young, which is such a classic like dad movie. Like it's every dad's favorite film. But I remember watching it with my dad and him just being like flabbergasted at how great and epic it was, and the soundtrack, and like, you know, him jumping over the wires on the motorcycle.
Yeah.
I remember that just like blowing me away that such an old film could be so epic and have so many stunts and such a big ensemble cast and stuff. So that was like the first movie I remember watching and being blown away by. And then like, I don't know, I watched When Harry Met Sally again for like the 7th time the other night, which I think is a flawless film. I think the script is literally flawless. I don't think you can get better than that. I could go on. There's so many.
Yeah. You talked about how you fell off a horse as a kid. You didn't want to get back on one, and for this show you had to. What was when you were sort of going for this role and sort of like found out that you're going to be playing Billy the Kid? What were the mental machinations with having to confront getting back on that horse?
I think I just had an appreciation this time around of the fact that you're getting on I don't know, however much they weigh, half a ton or whatever, a half a ton beast that has its own mind and its own willpower and its own instincts. And I think I had respect for it this time. I think the first time when I was young, I probably underestimated how vulnerable it is, and then was shocked when I fell off. This time, I think because I'd fallen off, it was actually a good thing. I went in with a respect for the horse, and I had a very good teacher who was a friend, who runs a ranch in upstate New York, and she rescues wild Mustangs. And so I spent a couple of weeks with her before filming in Canada. I spent that time with her kind of learning horsemanship, and I was very keen on like helping her muck out the stables and stuff and doing the things that actually make you appreciate all the aspects of working with horses. So you're not just like jumping on when someone says action and then riding off looking cool and then coming back and getting off and leaving someone else to do the actual work. It was important to me to learn how to saddle up my horse and, you know, clean the horse's hooves and do all that stuff as well, and brush the horses and muck them out. And yeah, I think all of that made me just respect the craft of horsemanship a little more, which, you know, Billy would have done, you know, the character would have done plenty of times over. And all of that just feeds into feeling like you are the character, because you're building this well of experience and memory that you share with the character.
Yeah, and you know, they say you've never ridden a horse unless you've fallen off. So
Exactly.
you were coming with a head start into this
Yeah.
series.
If
Yeah.
anything, you could say I was advanced. You
Yeah.
know, if you
Yeah.
wanted to, you could say that.
Talking about Billy, what, like you're saying, can't judge a book by its cover, and this show is able to explore Billy in a way that maybe the legend doesn't get to delve into. What, like, who is Billy? What do you think his driver is, and what if you had to define him after sort of playing him for a season, what would you say?
I think he's so many things. He's a man of many faces and many masks. But I do think ultimately underneath all of that is a need for authenticity. I think he goes through from a very young age seeing such, for lack of a better word, BS everywhere he goes. You know, like everyone is full of it. Everyone is saying one thing but meaning another, and he sees these lies and this corruption from such a young age that I think he was someone who could just see through people, you know. And I think when he met people who were honest, he was appreciative and made friends with them, and that's why he was an ally to the local Native Americans and Mexican population in Lincoln County, which is one of the reasons the war started. He was an ally to those people because they were authentic. They were living their true lives, and they were being pushed out by people who were inauthentic and corrupt and were trying to make a quick buck off the land. And he spoke fluent Spanish because of that, because he made friends with those people and learned their language and their culture. He was in love with a Mexican woman. And he was someone who he would do the thing that wasn't the status quo, you know. He wasn't afraid of that. He wasn't afraid of stepping out of line. But at the same time, he was prone to fits of violence, and he would overreact. And he's known to be, you know, a quick flare. He angered very quickly, even though he was very smart. And then the flip side of that as well is, you know, he played the fiddle really well, and he sang, and he read Shakespeare. He was smart. He was literate, which at that time in that area was unusual. So he had so many aspects to him, and I think that's why, you know, I read a comment of a fan the other day that was like, he wouldn't have done that. And I was like, how do you know what he would have done? Like, there's just no way you would. First of all, the lesson is don't read comments. But second of all, I'm still learning that one. Second of all is like, you know, people have no idea what he was like, because all the accounts are just people's perspectives from that time, and a lot of those people are his enemies as well. You know, Pat Garrett was the person who hunted him down and killed him, and so the idea that we can trust his perspective is bogus. It's like, yes, some of this stuff is factual. We know that witnesses were there. We know that it happened. We don't know how it happened, because how is a matter of perspective. We just know that it went down. So, you know, and there's so many gaps in the history that what great creator and showrunner Michael Hurst has done is take the known things and kind of extrapolate the unknown things, and then kind of dug deeper and said, you know, as an exercise in psychology and imagination, what happened in those unknown parts? Like, what about his father, who we don't know how he lost his father, or if his father was ever in the picture? And so Michael's met research with imagination and kind of put together a likely possibility that helps us try and understand him a little better.
And you're right with that learning and this sort of disillusionment that Billy has, because the very show sort of opens with the family going based on an advertisement for this town that ends up being just a complete sort of lie, pretty much, or like a spin, a massive spin. So from a very early age, he's just, from the very beginning of the series, we see this sort of, that the world is a lot more dishonest than maybe Billy and his family.
Yeah, I mean, that was clear to me from the beginning. I think that at least season one is very much about setting the brickworks, the groundworks, the kind of the basis for why he's cynical with authority. You know, like, we know he's an outlaw. We know he goes on to become like a Robin Hood type figure of the West. But why? Like, why? Like, what was it in his childhood that developed that psychology of distrust for authority? And it delves into that. And a big reason is he's an Irish immigrant. He's from an Irish immigrant family, first generation American, and he saw his mom and dad get promised the world when they came here after surviving the famine in Ireland and being subjugated there, and then being subjugated in New York and being second-class citizens. And then third but not least, like being promised a new life out west and going out there and traveling out there, and God knows what that would have brought. And then, you know, getting there and his mom getting sick and not being able to find work and no one taking her seriously as a woman, especially an Irish woman. And I think all of that just builds this character who is distrustful of promises and of the promised land and authority and structure, and realizes that he basically has to make it on his own.
You say there's like lots of gaps in the story of Billy that you guys on the show are filling in. Is that, as someone who's trying to craft this character and create the character, is it sort of tricky because you can't go to a lot of sort of stuff, or is it freeing that you get to sort of create it yourself?
I think it's a bit of both, honestly. I think when I first approached the character, it was vital to me. It felt vital to like completely 100% get it right, because he's a real person and people have expectations of what they want to see, especially because there've been other adaptations of this before. And, you know, people want to see their young guns like Love recreated. They want to see Emilio Estevez come back and do it. They want to see, you know, Paul Newman do Left-Handed Gun again. They want to see Val Kilmer. Like there are so many iterations, and I first of all feel very honored to like follow in some of my acting heroes' footsteps. But also with that came a pressure to kind of get it right. And the more I read, the more I realized that you can't get it right, because there's no footage or video of him. There's no recordings. He never wrote his own autobiography, so you can't get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. All you can do is take what you do know and the things that are available, and then build on that, and then make it your own. And there was a point where, in the process, I kind of had to cut myself off from this feeling of being beholden to like get it right, and then move into it, which you know is useful up to a point, because that research fills you up. It gets your imagination going, and it means that you're not going to completely go off piste and off path. But then it's about like, all right, how do I bring myself to this? Where do I meet Billy in the middle and make our own kind of new character, a new version of this? And a lot of that is in the writing too. I mean, Michael's written a character that is intensely watchful, and in season one, at least, who knows where we're going to take him in season two, but in season one, he's growing. Like it's a growth story, and we get to see him observing and learning new things and cherry picking what's going to be his toolkit of kind of skills and personality traits. And we also see so many different versions of him. You know, for the most part, he's watchful and quiet, but then he has fits of violence, or like fits of wit and comedy, and moments where he sings a lullaby to his love. You know, it's like we see those little sprinklings of character that are going to start to grow and become a fully fledged human being.
How do you approach those moments of silence as an actor where you need to convey a lot, but you don't have lots of lines to say?
It's an interesting one. I think for me, it's always about the inner life. It's always about doing all that work that we just spoke about beforehand, and then letting it go. Because like if you're thinking too much about it in the moment, you know, you look like you're memorizing like homework, or you know, you're gonna look like an actor who's like, I don't know, trying to like study for a test or something. But for me, it's about doing all that research way before, and then letting it go once you're in the moment, and really trusting the circumstances that are right in front of you, which is usually just your other actor and whatever they're trying to convey, or whatever their objective is, and meeting them with yours. Helps to have a good cast around you who bring the best out in you. You know, Eileen O'Higgins is unbelievable as Kathleen, and I mean she's incredibly believable as Kathleen, but her talent is unbelievable. And I don't know, acting with her was a masterclass. Like sitting down, she's so good at those quiet moments of intense kind of emotional vulnerability. And she taught me so much about that, just about kind of allowing yourself to sit in the moment and be vulnerable. And sometimes that takes patience. Sometimes that means taking a few more moments after they say action to like let yourself really go there and then go into it, you know, which isn't always easy when you're up against the clock on a TV show. So it's, yeah.
Did you have a favorite moment from the series?
I have a few, for different reasons. Can I give you two?
Yeah.
The first one would be Kathleen's death, the moment where Billy loses his mom and says goodbye. that was like, I think I've been acting since I was 14, and that was the most painful moment of acting I've ever done, but also the most beautiful and moving. And I've never felt more like I forgot I was acting and forgot that the lights and the camera were there. You know, Eileen and I really just dropped in for the whole day and felt like we were in this. I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen the show, but you know, it's a drawn out montage of Kathleen's passing, and we filmed it over one day, and I remember it just felt like, you know, having lost people in my personal life before, I know what it feels like. You kind of go into this clouded state, and then you come out the other side, and it's almost like a bizarre fever dream. And it felt like we were in that. The whole day felt like a bizarre fever dream of like loss and grief, and I don't know, very cathartic, but very devastating. It took me a few days to come down from that. So that was good for one reason, because it was kind of a deep, sad catharsis. And then the other side is the first day where we really got to ride hard. Daniel Weber and I, who plays Jesse Evans, him and I we've been doing like a bit of riding into town, a bit of this sort of thing. And then we were filming episode 3, where Jesse takes me cattle rustling for the first time. And they brought like 200 head of longhorn cattle down to the ranch. And we're out in these fields, and the shot they wanted to get was us riding out of the tree line to this grazing herd, and then kind of rounding them up, but the herd kind of scatters, and we have to go in amongst them and round them up, and we're all like yipping and yee-hawing. And they literally, one of the wranglers on a horse with a little like jib, a rig with a camera on it, and that he was filming us alongside us while we're going full gallop, and these cows are like weaving in and out of us, and we filmed that sequence for about something like 7 or 8 hours. And by the end, like the adrenaline, I was so depleted of adrenaline. I just felt like I don't know, I'd like competed in the Olympics or something. It was like this feeling of like pure ecstasy. And it felt like work. It felt like hard work, because in between takes, the cattle would you know, split off and disappear, and we'd have to help the wranglers, because there were so many cows and not enough wranglers, that we were useful on horseback. So we became wranglers by accident, because they'd be like, get that cow, and we were, at this point, we were both good enough at riding and wrangling and kind of ranch work that we could go off and do it. And so we'd go and we'd round up the cows, and we'd work in unison with the wranglers. And it got to a point where we both looked at each other and we were like, this isn't even acting, this is just living. Like, we, you know, God, that sounds like a cliche, but like it, you know, it felt like living the circumstances of the show, so we didn't even have to pretend, because we were actually doing the thing we were supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Oh, well, the acting thing doesn't work out, you guys can start up a cattle farm.
The amount of times we said that, Matt, like, is unreal. I kept saying, like, you know, if the acting thing gets old, or if we stop making work, then we'll just start a ranch, or we'll go and get ranch work.
Yeah. Ranch just be careful the flyers you look at for what town you go to visit.
Oh, really?
You got to set up your business. Yeah, just look out. Just make sure. Sometimes they can promise a lot. They can promise a lot. And
yeah, I'm sure.
Well, Tom, what's special about this show?
I think it's taking a story that people think they know and think that they've seen before, and pulling it apart, to get to the truth of the matter and the psychology of the character. It's got heart, it's got soul in a way that Westerns don't always have, because they can be a bit cliche, they can be a bit tropey. I think this show, because of Michael and the directors that we had and the amazing cast, I think it feels more like a gritty historical drama. It feels like it's more dropped into kind of the life of living at that time. It's not just about the tip of the hat and the gun spinning. It's about, you know, the psychological, emotional life of these people.
Yeah, no, it's very good. And Tom, thank you so much for talking to us today. All the best of luck for the Emmy Awards for Billy the Kid. Also, congratulations on getting cast in the Hunger Games prequel. That's exciting.
It is exciting, yeah. I'm gobsmacked. I'm still kind of coming down from the high of that, because I was such a big fan of those movies growing up. So I feel very honored to be stepping into that world, and with Frances at the helm, it's going to be incredible.
Yeah. When you watched the Hunger Games movie, were you like Team Katniss? Were you going for her to win the Hunger Games?
Or... Oh yeah, I mean, who wasn't, man?
Yeah.
You know,
it's
like, how could you not rally around her in those movies? Yeah. I don't know if anyone was like Team I don't know, the bad guys, the bad tributes. So like, and they're so good, those movies, man. Like I just recently rewatched them, and like you think of them as like being a great franchise, but you forget that they're good films as well. Like individually, they're really gritty, like heartfelt, like heart-pounding films. Like, well, yeah, they're just good.
Yeah. Hopefully the prequels are too.
I hope so, knock on wood, yeah.
Yeah, no, but you're a part of it now. It's really
No, I
exciting.
know. I guess I shouldn't be knocking on wood. I guess it's in my control, right?
Yeah. No. But very good, Tom. And thanks for talking today. Hey, people watching this interview can go to goldderby.com to make your own awards predictions. And again, Tom, best of luck for the Emmy Awards for Billy the Kid. Thanks for chatting.
Pleasure to speak to you. Thank you.